Now, you may have heard a thud just a moment ago. That would be the sound of the Blue Book of Gun Values hitting the table here. You want to talk about some serious research right there, and I'm very pleased to have with us Steve Fjested from Blue Book Publications. How are you, sir?
Excellent, thanks. Really good to be here.
Thank you. Also, Cliff Burgess from NRA Firearms for Freedom. How are you, sir?
I'm just fine. Thank you, Cam.
Well, thank you both for coming on the program. And let's talk about the Firearms for Freedom program, Cliff. What's this all about?
Well, we took a look at what is the most common thing that NRA members have with each other. And we all own firearms. And we all are concerned about the right to own our firearms, but we don't all have the same financial resources in which to support the Second Amendment. So we came up with this program where we take the message to the NRA members that their firearms are a financial asset. They need to understand that. And many people don't have a plan for them. They take care of their firearms today while they're using them, but they don't consider where they're going to go at the end of their life and when they pass on to the next life. So the idea is to provide education through brochures, through a website that allows them to consider this financial asset and how to deal with it. And there's three ways in which they can deal with it. As they get to the point where they're no longer using firearms, they can make an outright donation. And I have had donations of 1 or 2 .22 rifles all the way up to collections of 71 firearms.
Wow.
And in that case, it was a widow whose husband passed away, and she had these firearms, and she contacted us, and we were able to say, yes, we'll be able to pick them up for you, and what do you want us to do with them? She said, my husband loved the NRA. I don't care what you do with them. I said, well, do you want a tax deduction? You know, do you want to make a charitable contribution with them? Because you can do that through the NRA to one of the 4 501c3c.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, no, it's an unrestricted gift. So those firearms were picked up by our auction partner, who happens to be right now Greg Martin Auctions, packed up for her and were transported to out to their facilities in California, where there will be auction in August of this year. Now, the thing about it is that she's made this, you know, now gift, as we call it, but the auction company is going to not charge us at all to sell these firearms.
Wow.
The seller's fees are totally remitted. That's the way they are going to support the National Rifle Association.
That's fantastic.
They will be fortunate if they break even on the buyer's premiums, but that means every penny that those guns get in bids will come back to support the NRA. So what's another way that the program works? Well, suppose you get to a point in life where you're concerned about your retirement income. People have collections, and most of them should be paying attention to what the Blue Book has to say as far as their values, but they don't tend to do that. But when they get to a point where they say, well, I'm in my early 60s and I'm going to be retiring, and I'm concerned that Social Security and my 401ks, a collection is a financial asset that can add to that through a charitable gift annuity. And we've had tremendous interest since January. We've run 2 ads in the magazines, and the phones have been ringing off the hook with people who are saying, what can I do? How can I do this? And we have the facilities and the staff to assist people in analyzing their gun collections, determining their values through references like the Blue Book, and then we sell them at auction, and they will end up with an income stream if everything works right the way it's supposed to. When the 2 annuitants, 1 or 2 annuitants pass, then the residual will come back to the NRA, one of the 4 charitable affiliates, the Foundation, NRA Foundation, Special Contribution Fund, the NRA Civil Rights Defense Fund, and the New Freedom Action Fund. And then the last way it works is that people, and I talked to a gun collector who said, well, I don't want to give up my guns until I die. And I said, well, do you have a wife? He said, yeah. have you made plans for what she's going to do with the firearms? Well, I figure she'll, So I said, well, make sure you put something in your will. And if you want to support the NRA, you can have part or all of your collection go. And in those cases, if you make a charitable contribution, it can offset estate taxes. What it boils down to, Cam, is that there are just many, many circumstances, different circumstances that our members have where their firearms can work for them and work for the NRA. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of the arrangement that we have with Greg Martin Auctions in this case is that we end up with 3 winners. The first winner is the donor. Whatever their needs or intents are served by whatever we can do for them. The second winner is the NRA, because they will be a beneficiary as in all or part of the proceeds from the sale of those guns. And then the third winner is the buyer of the firearms, because when they are participating in these auctions, they are exclusively for the benefit of the NRA. Every firearm in the auction is donated by an NRA member, and the buyers are going to end up supporting the NRA with their purchase funds. And we think that in the long run, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, mm-hmm. those firearms will come back to us in the Firearms for Freedom program. They will be a resource that will be turned over years and over years. The program is just getting traction now, but it's terribly, terribly exciting. We're fortunate to have Blue Book as a partner. They are the official reference of our program, and of course Blue Book has had a long history of support for the organization. Oh, yes,
sir.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
In fact, Dr. Fjested, our licensed gynecologist,
yes,
which, by the way, I see a future...
By the way, I'm running behind in appointments. We're going to have to hurry this up.
Okay. I see a future, by the way. You need to be selling those for Halloween, because that's a great costume. I'm really thinking I would like to be a licensed gynecologist for Halloween as well.
I can make you one, but the training is pretty severe, okay? And the inspection rooms are not up to my standards at this particular facility, so maybe some other place, okay?
This is fantastic. So, let's talk about your partnership with the Firearms for Freedom program. And obviously, as we've talked about, the Blue Book is literally the gold standard, I think, for reference guides for firearms.
Especially with Frank Brownell on the cover.
Yes, sir. So let's talk about your involvement. Why is this a program that you wanted to be a part of?
Well, let's take it back all the way, Cliff. When did we get started again? It was back in Kansas City, wasn't it?
About 1994 or 5.
He came walking up to the booth.
Yes.
And I remember it well. And he said, Steve, you ever thought about
the Roundup program?
The Roundup program. I had no idea what he was talking about. And he gave me a pretty good pitch. And Joe Foss was there that year, remember?
That's right.
We had him on the cover.
Yep.
And the rest, like they say, is history. It's been really fun to support the NRA. It's a good fit for both of us, We're a scrappy little publishing company. We do whatever we can for the NRA. But when this Firearms for Freedom program came up, that's when it kind of advanced to the next level. Mm-hmm. I mean, now I have a chance to become the official, pricing guide of the NRA, even though, I can't say that on the air, can I? I guess I just did. Well, whatever. It gives them a good reference point. And that's important because I think what Cliff said earlier, education on the part of the donor is very, very important. Mm-hmm. And, the good news about it, every gun owner in this country trusts the NRA. And with these guys, you have advancement officers who go out and meet with the people and shake their hands. They're concerned about what they're doing. One of your gentlemen from California stopped by, and he was very, he spent 2 hours looking at the wife's, I think she had a quilt collection or something like that.
Right.
But they generally, take an interest. They're not just there to grab your guns and get out, and your check will come in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure is there to really, really do a good job. And that's why the NRA is going to be successful with this program, because they do have regional people who, if Cliff gets a phone call and that looks good, he can have somebody there the next morning.
Yeah.
And and they're their friend.
Absolutely. And, I can't tell you guys how many stories that I've seen over the years where, one of these cities will hold a quote-unquote gun buyback program.
Yes.
And you see, you know, widows who are taking their husband's firearms and they don't know what they have. And I remember a story a few years ago down in Miami. A woman brought in a gun that her husband had come home from World War II with. She didn't know what she had, handed it over. Turns out it was a Japanese prototype rifle, only 10 or 20 in existence, I think, that they know about. Really kind of priceless. And this thing was going to be destroyed. It was just going to be destroyed, and they told the local police department what they had. Didn't really matter. And after some hue and cry, I think the gun was actually donated to a museum down there. But those folks aren't going to tell you what you have. They're not going to. They want your guns so they can destroy them. Right. And I guess if I was talking to one of these widows, is if your husband, if your loved one had these firearms, they obviously meant something to him. And you do his memory good, I think, by taking part in a program like this rather than just essentially throwing them in the trash.
Yes. Well, there's a good point, and another nice thing that Cliff didn't bring up, but one of the benefits of this program is that the National Firearms Museum, when you donate the guns, Cliff, they'll take images and they'll put those guns in like a virtual museum format. So 40 years from now, Cousin Billy can look at what his uncle brought back from World War II in a virtual museum format.
Oh, wow.
And I think that is really cool. Really cool.
That is really cool.
There's another point that you almost touched on, Cam, and that is, by having this formal program and encouraging the members to look at their collections, and once they get into the donation process, every donation, whether it's a single gun or in one case 347 guns, and an estate just came in with 400 firearms, every firearm donation is reviewed by the National Firearms Museum. And when they see something that should be in the museum or is desired for the museum, then the donor is advised. The donor doesn't have to give it to them, but in many cases they do. We had a case where a gentleman in our last auction had donated 100 firearms for a charitable gift annuity. We ran the list by the museum. The museum said, whoa, there's 4 things in there that we'd really like. He was tickled pink.
Oh, wow.
And then he said, I think I have another gun that they'd like too. So they ended up getting 5 firearms, and then he replaced them with other firearms to get it back up to 100, and then he ended up with a $22,000 charitable gift annuity for his donation.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. So we are working hand and we have an exhibit here that has firearms that have all been donated through the program since the program started, which is just last summer.
Okay.
And there's a Colt pistol that was belonged to the outlaw Tom Blackjack Ketchum. Pictures of his hanging that just came into the museum last week and is on its first public display at our booth right outside the door.
Wow,
here.
That is fantastic.
There are great stories, too many to tell today, but that's just an example of how the program is working, not only for the NRA but for the Firearms Museum and posterity, being able to capture these little pearls of American history and put them on display.
Absolutely.
It's really a good program because, I imagine there's some listeners out there that are going to wonder, well, why don't I go to an auction, or, why don't I go to a gun dealer? Maybe I can get more money doing something else. But if you think about it, once they put their gun in an auction, the first thing that's going to happen, the auction's going to clip them for 15%.
That's
right.
For a seller's premium. Next thing that's going to happen, if you really do it right, you're going to have to declare capital gains on that. If you're doing it interstate, so now you're maybe in another 15, 20%. So now you're 35% off whatever that auction's going to be, and not one dime yet has gone to the National Firearms Museum or the NRA. So it just keeps whittling down to the point where, I figured it out. It's probably like 35-40%. You know, I mean, what you're really going to get from that auction or whatever. And that's why the Firearms for Freedom program offers a lot of versatility. They can earmark where the money will go at the NRA. And, I mean, it's like on Cliff's, it's a win-win-win situation.
Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program to talk about it today. I know we'll be discussing it more in the future. But, Steve, great to see you, sir.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Cliff, thank you, sir, as well. Appreciate you coming on the program today.